Okay, so we'll go ahead and call the SAU 44 joint school board meeting to order at 6:35. And we'll start with a roll call to establish quorum. Jen,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Chrissy,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Sarah.
I'm not going to be here tonight.
Okay. Susan's here, Kathy,
Here.
Carol will be here later, Megan,
Yes.
and Lori.
Here.
So we've got 8 each. I think I hear, it might be someone telling me they're gonna be here. I'll just double check. So, okay. All right, so we have time set aside for public comment, but there's no public here. So we'll go ahead and move on to the approval of our minutes. Okay. Carol. Okay, so we'll go ahead and look at our minutes on page 4. Anyone have any changes, or you can just start on page 4 there. Anything on page 5? Anything on page 6? Not hearing any changes. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we approve the November 8th school board meeting.
Who's the second? Kathy. Okay, thank you. Okay, we've got our motion and second. All those in favor? Oh, that's right. I apologize. We have to roll call because we have Chrissy on the line. We'll go ahead and do that. Jen,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Chrissy,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
I'm a yes. Kathy?
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
and Lori.
I'm gonna abstain who wasn't here.
Okay. All right, so we have 8 in favor, 7 in favor, and 1 abstention. 8 in favor, 1 abstention. for the seven. I had one quick question. The prior meeting minutes that we've had, that we made some adjustments to, have those all been, the former secretary has been able to go ahead and adjust those? Okay. I didn't have time to check to see if they were posted. So. That. Right then. Moving forward to our committee reports. Any committee meet in the last month? Okay, moving on from that. On to the business administrators report.
So your administrator's business report starts on page 7. So page 7 is the summary of your monthly expenditure report. If there are no questions on this one, what I'd like to do is I'm going to go ahead and start on page 8 with a little bit more of an overview to kind of break out some of the things that I see still need to be corrected. As we know, we've been moving forward and things have been going through, but I can give you a little bit more of an overview of some areas that I see that can be adjusted. So if we go ahead and go to page 8, I see a couple different lines that I know have some discrepancy on them. So if we were to look at I'm going to go with the description as opposed to reading the line for now, the number, but if it's easier and you need me to read the number, I can. But if you look about 5 lines down, you'll see health insurance superintendent, and you'll see that one's overdrawn by 13,000. But if you go 2 lines down below, it says health insurance, and it's not got anything taken out of it. I believe those 2 are errors. I see an old line and a new line. So it was billed to the prior line, so it's going to be corrected. That will be corrected. So you're not overdrawn by 12,000 there. Up above that 12,000, I'm shouldn't have skipped over it. You do see that the receptionist is overbilled, but that's because we didn't budget it and we're finding those savings through other lines. So that is a true overdrawn because we had not budgeted for that. I do not think we're going to be overdrawn by that much. That was in anticipation. We encumbered more, thinking we'd go all the way through, but we'll wound up not hiring right away. And there's been a number of days that it wasn't completely filled. So that number will go down, but it is overdrawn as that position was not originally budgeted for. If you go just a little above halfway, you'll see the superintendent FICA. It's showing as $4,943 is the remaining balance. That should also be at a zero. Where you've encumbered all of my salary, you should also encumber all the FICA because you know it's going to pay down and that's what it was based on. So that should also be adjusted down to zero. You won't have 4,000 there. If you go a little further down, you'll see courses and conferences. It's overdrawn by almost $2,200. That is not correct. That overdraw of 2,200 is really because your course and conferences, it should $1,950 of it should have come out of professional associations, and it did not. So I think there was a misdraw on that, and that'll be fixed. I'll go over that with them. After this was looked at, I was able to see some of those. So that's where you're currently at. All said and done, though, compared to where we were when you saw this about a month ago, there's been a lot of cleanup here, and I'll be continuing to meet with them the best I can to go ahead and continue to clean these up. But those were some of the larger ones I saw on page 8. Any questions on that one? On that page, we're going to go to the next page if there are none. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So if we go to page 9. At the top of the page, you'll see there's a balance, a budget balance available of almost $40,000 for your assistant student service director. That will be paid down. About $8,000 will come out of there, but that is because we didn't hire an assistant director of student services. We combined that with your school psychology and we did that at a discounted rate. So while that number is not 100% accurate, it is pretty close. That number is going to come down a little bit. It just won't be all the way down. So you will have a large balance there. Your student services administrative assistant salary, as well as your health insurance for your student services admin, the next 2 lines, those will also increase. Those are also going to go up because those were encumbered prior to the change in employment. So you're going to see some savings in the assistant, the admin salary, assistant admin salary, as well as the health insurance in that line should go up as well. The secretary line below, I'm sorry.
Sorry, which line? I'm losing track here. I've got.
So if you're looking at the next 4 lines, so you have your student services admin assistant salary. It says there's only $10 available.
Okay.
That's going to go up because we don't have that position anymore. There's some draw out of it because that person is working 2 to 3 hours a day for us at times, but not as much. Your health insurance for your student services admin, that's going to go up because that was based on having 2 people with health insurance. You only have 1. And then the following health insurance for your student services secretary, that line may go up slightly because again, that was tied to someone who was here and who's no longer working here. Those 4 lines are going to adjust up.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nope, not a problem. If you go a little further down, you'll see New Hampshire retirement for student service director and assistant director. You'll see it's overdrawn by $4,506. That line will also go up. It will not be overdrawn. I think that's a double encumbrance as it is. And again, without that position, you should see additional savings in that line. So once all that's cleared up, I believe you'll wind up seeing closer to 80 to 85,000 left in those lines, which is one of the ways we were able to look at increasing the services we needed for the receptionist, as well as some of the VA support and bringing back a retiree to help get us trained. Go a little further down, you see the salary for the professional business manager. That still does have 95,000 in it. That's because that is being offset by your contracted interim business administrator all the way down at the bottom of that page. You'll see it's overdrawn by 77,000 because again, we didn't budget for it. We were hoping to have the position. We didn't have the position. So what you're going to find is a lot of the corresponding lines that go with the salary are going to be encumbered into your contracted service. What I will tell you at this point is you are still continuously a large amount of savings because even when we had budgeted for your contracted BA services, it was at the cost of around $115,000 to $120,000. That is when we had Mr. Waring here for 3 days a week. We have nowhere near that service right now. So you're going to continue to see savings there, which I'll talk about when I get into my report on personnel. Okay. So if there's no questions on these lines, because again, we have to track through these a little bit more as we get closer. But if there's no questions on page 9, I would go to page 10. Okay, page 10, so the third page of this report, you'll see the function of the office business manager shows a balance of around 80,000. I believe that to be higher right now, proportionally higher. We'll be able to look at that some more. But that is going to be quite a bit higher right now because again, we're not utilizing all those services. It's something that I'll be working with the business office to try to tack down a little bit more of a concrete number for us. But between the BA and the special ed services, you are tracking to have a large remaining surplus here at the SAU. So any questions on this expenditure report, the more detailed?
Can you just help me understand about halfway down this last page here, page 10, the function of 2540 is printing and advertising, but what is the insurance liability? That seems to be the only actual line in there.
So they just haven't put that through correctly. So when you create these functions, probably didn't get put through correctly. That should be function should be your insurance. It shouldn't see printing and advertising. It should be insurance. So I'll look at that function on why it's not titled well. It's kind of like one of the other ones that we'd seen when it said PT, but it's OT and PT, and you had to put them together because those lines tie.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Can you stop for just a moment? I think I have a message from Chrissy. Chrissy, are you able to hear us? I have a note here, called back twice and nothing is going through.
I gave her the number. It's whatever.
I think that's. Is that
It's not
her?
ringing.
Is that her number?
I'll try calling.
Had no problem calling you before we got here, so.
Sorry, I just want to make sure
Yeah,
that she
yeah,
can
good. Yeah, I'm glad.
participate.
I can move Aaron. I always find that it's awkward. It's fine. I'm not sure why. She didn't. I can check my email too.
She had the number before. Is there any chance maybe she got it confused with the Northwood number? Maybe we can just double check and send her this
No,
number.
no, she called earlier
Okay.
and I sent her the number. If you want to send her the number, I can give it to you again.
Getting voicemail, so.
Okay.
I'm just making her a note that we're trying to connect you. If you want
If she wants to recall that number, it's working.
to, okay, and what
Yeah.
number would that be?
462-0140.
repeating it in my head.
Okay, I'll keep an eye on that. So at this point, we're at 8
Okay.
members and monitor that. I'm sorry. for
No,
the
no problem.
interruption.
Any other questions on that? So on your revenue, I do have, I have to try to figure out what's going on because under district apportionment, I'm gonna say it says apportionation, but it currently has a balance of $129,055.77 extra for Northwood. I'm not quite understanding why that's there because it's quite a bit more than what was required, so I'm trying to figure that out. So once we figure that out, I'll be able to give you a little bit more, but everything is still tracking correctly. Okay, so that brings us, if there's no questions on that, that would bring us to page number 12, which is your preschool expenditure report. Because it worked then.
She has to do the 603 years.
Yeah. She's saying it's fine, just continue on the meeting, don't delay it because the phone won't connect. She can't connect.
Oh,
No, that's me.
me. Too. Jackie, everyone jumped.
No, that was me. So,
Can we call her from this phone?
Absolutely. Great idea.
I don't have her cell phone number and I don't want to read it out loud.
oh, yeah, I won't read out loud.
And if that doesn't work, we'll have to, I just want to make an effort to. She's there.
You are home with a couple extra phones tonight.
Have it.
If this fails, we'll just.
Hi, you reached Chrissy Berry.
Okay.
Please leave a message. I'll get back to
Yeah,
you.
it's
soon.
my
All right.
phone.
All right, then we'll move on. Sorry for the delay.
No problem. So at the top of page 12, you'll see that the salary for the child find coordinator is got a budget balance in it. That is correct. The reason that was part of the director's salary. So the reason that's not being drawn is it's not going to be drawn. That position wasn't there. It's also, there's some confusion when you start looking at overdrawing of health insurance. If you look at the overdraw of the health insurance, you'll also see that if you go a couple lines down, there's a $66,000 balance of health insurance. There's some misbilling of lines. So once we get that cleared up, you will see that there is going to be a savings of about $12,000 or so in health insurance costs. Right, that's correct.
So
So
43 and 9 will wash out.
yeah, so those lines will go. The rest of it, the rest of the things on this seem to be tracking pretty well. You'll see some savings throughout when you talk about preschool, when you're talking about retirement, when you're talking about FICA, all of those types of things that track through this, and dental. But for the most part, everything else looks to be pretty decent and on track for the rest of that page. I do have some notes that I'd like to give you on page 13 though. So if there's no questions on page 12, we can go to 13. So page 13 at the top, you'll see large budget balances available under your OT section. That is because that OT hasn't been billed out yet. That is your preschool portion of OT, but that is all paid for from Northwood right now, and it will be billed out to this section afterwards because it's billed through that process because it's 70% out of Northwood and 30% in the preschool, but so that's why it's billed out that way. That will be corrected. Other than that, the rest of these things are tracking pretty decently moving through. You'll see that only half of the rent has been taken up, but overall you do see a budget balance at the end, which will come back down here by roughly another 40 or 50,000, but you should have a good balance here. You're not going anywhere near deficit yet. Okay.
show the 90, but 94 showing for
Yeah.
anticipated balance, but 25 would come right off of that.
So 32 will come off of it. Yeah, well, it's about 32. So all of your OT costs will come off.
Mhm.
Another 15,000 for your
Okay.
building rent will come off. But you are going to have savings because again, you don't have the child find coordinator going through there. So you are tracking on par to have a fair amount of savings in your preschool costs as well. And then the final page that is in your business administrator's report is your current tuition, well, your revenue. So you have the money coming in from each town. Yet again, under the Northwood section, you have a large extra, which I'm not quite sure why this keeps turning up in different areas. So they show the apportionment, but then they show additional fees going in. So we'll have to look at why that is occurring. Something to be looking at, but as of right now, you do see that you have money coming in for tuition from the parents that will help to offset. So you do have revenue, so that again is going to further offset that cost.
So we'd each be paying 185,853,
Mhm.
and we've, both parties at the very least have paid the 185,
They will be, yes.
but it hasn't, it's just, okay.
Mhm.
So it hasn't obviously all been billed out,
That's
but
correct.
for some reason, we're showing the 46,000 balance.
Yes,
Okay.
and I'm not, because it looks like it's getting overbilled out.
Mm.
So the only thing I can think of on that is they are doing something with the OT and it's like getting billed back as opposed to getting paid out. So that's, I'm trying to figure that out.
Okay.
But what I would really be looking at is if you were to look, the only thing that concerns me, not concerns me, but I would like to point out is the preschool tuition from parents. We had originally said we thought we would get about $28,000 in revenue, and we are tracking for that. So that's good. Our concern was we didn't know what we would track because of COVID. We are tracking to be able to get those funds in. Okay, so that is a good thing. That's coming in.
Is the 38,000 in that line accurate or should it be 20? Says year to date 38,000.
I can't, I don't think we've gotten that much in. I think what they did, we estimated 28,000, and I think then we said if filled, it would be 38. So I think they put the 38 in, but I don't think we're at, I know we're not at 38 yet.
Yeah.
But that's what it would track for the rest of the year. When we originally built the budget, we said 28, but then we started looking at being able to put more students in, so they increased it based on the number of seats.
So some of these discrepancies or whatever, however, trying to find a
Discrepancy,
neutral word
yeah.
to describe them. They're the result of the beginning number, perhaps, as you just described, having been estimated or something, but they're also the result of some entries as well.
That's correct.
Okay, so we've got some entry errors, we've got some non-entries, and we have some beginning number.
That's correct. So when we look at the entry error, it's that, not that it's getting paid differently. What had wound up happening about 3 or 4 BAs back, we created
Last year.
we created new lines. And when you create new lines and you have 6 different health insurance lines, and you're trying to tag one for health insurance, if you tag the wrong one, it will let you bill it and overbill it. So it looks like you're overdrawn, even though you didn't tag the correct one that had the money available, and they don't wash out. It's not something, originally the thought process was, once you put the information in once, it did it all throughout and it tracked through. It doesn't do that. You have to go in each time and set it to where it's supposed to go. And once you set it to where it goes, it draws it out correctly, and then you can track that. What had happened is we have so many extra lines. It's one of the things one of our BA consultants had mentioned was the more lines you have, the more room for error occurs. So if you're able to consolidate lines, so if you had all of your, not, you can't do this, but this is an example. If you had all of your staff in your entire district under one line for employment, and then you had one line for health insurance, you'd never be able to build the wrong line. The only problem is you also wouldn't be able to track to see where you're at. That's why they do break it up. But what has occurred is we've broken it up too much over the years. For instance, what the BA had said is we currently in each school district set it up to where your principal and assistant principal are separate, as well as your director of students. You don't necessarily have to do that. They could have all been under admin. They could have all been admin, all through, and including your administrative assistants could have been under the admin, the principal line, all the salaries. And then in your description, you would have said, this includes these positions. So then you have one salary and one benefit line, and that makes it much easier to follow. It makes it harder to build the wrong lines. So.
I think some of this happened several VAs back, just maybe 2 or 3, where the mission of the business group was to set up iVision and to adjust the chart of accounts.
That's
I
correct.
think that was part of the plan, bringing iVision up, was to kind of expand. It was my understanding of what they wanted to do.
Correct. It was to expand the chart of accounts. It's different philosophies. Neither one of them is wrong.
Yeah, it's just choice.
It's choice. And I think if we were fully staffed, I don't think the extra lines would matter. I think being short-staffed, trying to get things done in a timely fashion, it winds up creating more work because you're doing adjustment entries when you realize the wrong one was tagged. And some of that also has to do with the turnover and training of new people constantly to make sure that the same person isn't the one doing it all the time.
Mhm.
So when you have someone else new doing it and they went and tagged another line, they didn't catch it until it was too late. And then they set it up for all the reoccurring ones. So you have to then go back in and fix it. So once we get that fixed, that's one of the things I've been working with Ms. Osborne. She's been amazing, going above and beyond, especially in her role, to help to fix all the journal entries and build people out so that I can then go in and approve it, so that we can see where they should be coming out of. So I'm getting a little more in depth in this than I thought I would with workflow. It's a neat feature.
Mhm.
Just luckily we still have someone who's able to do that.
Pretty good on that
Yeah,
section.
yeah.
Does anyone have any questions on any of this? All good? Okay. Next up is our student service report, and that is in your packet, page 15.
So I'll just point out some changes in the step-by-step preschool enrollment. We have some tuition 4-year-olds that have left, were transferred. So there's 3 less 4-year-olds that are paying tuition. 1 is transferred to special education, 1 moved out of town, and 1 left for a full-time daycare situation. So I do kind of keep track of those reasons to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the community in general. Some of the additions are a result of some of the referrals that we've had in process for the last few months. The only other thing to point out, the number of tuition students receiving scholarships has also gone down, and that's because of some of the 4-year-olds that have left the tuition program. Any questions about step by step? I do plan to resume the preschool transition committee in Nottingham and also start to talk about transition planning in Northwood. There won't be a lot of huge changes, but even just going from the 2 classrooms to 1 will definitely require some planning. And so we'll be picking that back up after the new year. And then for the alt ed program, a few changes. Northwood had 1 student graduate, which is wonderful, and 2 more students join the program. And other than that, it's been pretty stable.
There's a total of 13 in there now,
Yes,
full-time, and
yes,
6 part-time.
yes.
It just, for me, historically, it seems as though the program has changed a little bit. I think initially it was intended for kids that weren't able, for whatever reason, to attend, and it was primarily Co-Brown. Co-Brown had revised some of their practices, and really a lot of the kids that were involved were, sometimes there were health issues and so forth that precluded them. But I see now that it's more, do we have someone in the schools directly, or it just seems like it's higher enrollment now than it has been in the past, and I'm just curious about that.
Sure, even the historical perspective.
These
Thanks.
numbers are, yeah, no, these numbers are pretty consistent from when I've joined. So for
Mhm.
the last 5 years, there hasn't been a large change in numbers for the number of students that have attended. Typically speaking, we do see students from Co-Brown. Occasionally, we will have someone from Dover who will come and participate. We don't have someone in the school doing these services. This is outside of what the school does. This is really what you would look at in some of the larger districts as more of an adult learning diploma. These students are students who are struggling to make growth in their school setting and would otherwise not be able to receive services. Some of your larger districts would have these programs, but where we have the smaller districts, we don't. So what we've done is we've really implemented a process where we look at students. Some of it is medical, some of it is mental health. A portion of our students that participate here have some mental health stability issues right now with COVID and other things going on, but the numbers have still been pretty steady for that rate of 13 at this point in the year. Typically, by the end of the year, we will see somewhere in the range of 12 that have gone through at a full-time pace, depending on what's going on.
Okay. Right, and I knew we were going to tuition in Stratford. We had
Mhm.
talked about that as part of their transition, but we also have other towns too now
We have had students from Barrington
for a
for
while,
at least 2 or 3 years that we've
Wow,
serviced.
okay.
Yeah,
and they pay,
they pay a portion per day per student
For the full-time program.
for the
not
full-time
the
program.
part-time.
Yeah, not for any of the credit recovery. We don't charge for. That's just something we work with Co-Brown to do. Because it's not any work on us. All we do is allow them access to the program. Mr. Holton helps set it up a little bit, but he can do that while he's working with the other students. And then they participate in that at the Co-Brown school, at school.
and these kids come in and use the third floor,
That is correct.
like on a full-time basis, or is it mostly, they do any like sort of, they do any online?
They do some online components with Mr. Holton, but then they're also here.
Okay, so mixed, okay.
Yep.
Does anyone else have any questions about that? And then I just had Medicaid to schools question.
Sure. So this was something I talked about at the Northwood Board meeting last week, and I have on the report to talk to Nottingham about as well. That I spoke with the representatives from MSB, and we talked about contracting over the next couple of years. And they're going to allow us to reduce our rate to 6% for the first year. And then it will go up to 8%. We've been paying 9%. So this is a reduction for us, which is nice. And we also talked about splitting the contract so it's not together anymore. And we don't have to rewrite it in July, which again allows us, both districts, to get that 6% for the full year instead of rewriting it in July and having them negotiate another rate. And then the last piece about Medicaid to schools is we're also adding indirect cost rates to the provider reimbursement rates. And they're the same as your IDEA indirect cost rates.
And what that means is now we'll be able to bill for those services at that indirect cost. So you'll be getting additional funds in. It doesn't cost more, just you get additional funds in for the service.
And that's my report.
Anybody have any questions? And this, I guess I do. MSP, is it software? What exactly is it?
MSP is a third-party billing
Right.
service, and so they have Xlogs as their software program that our service providers document their sessions, and then MSB can bill it out for us.
So they're like a third-party administrator, and that's what's been tracking through our budgets, to
Exactly.
pay them for their services.
Right, they get paid, we don't pay them separately, they get paid
They
a
take it
percentage of
right
what we
out.
get back.
Yeah.
So we don't ever, yeah,
We budget under your 1299 lines.
Yep.
So there's a Medicaid to schools 1299 function. under your 1299 function, we budget in based on what we've seen in previous years that we're receiving. So you would never, if you ever overdraw that line, it's only because you got more money in than what we anticipated. So if that money goes into deficit, that's actually a decent thing, because that means you were billing out more than what we thought we would.
So they're a third-party provider providing these billing services, and for which they receive 9%, and now it will be 6%, next year it will be 8%. But they've had issues.
They've had glitches in their software system that have backed up some of the billing, which they're correcting. But in that discussion, I was able to say, and they have good customer service. They're working on things, but there have been issues across the state, not just for our districts.
Statewide.
So I kind of took the opportunity
To kind of, leverage out of it. Yeah. But the impact of it is there's no significant impact.
The impact may have been some delayed billing, but it's not a financial, it's not a long-term financial impact. No,
It's not an impact for our providers in any way,
No.
putting them.
not at all. It's just that the information they've been putting in, have been some blocks to actually billing that out.
Okay.
So, but the system stores all the information that our providers
So
put
we're
in, so
allowed to.
it's all in there.
Thanks.
And just for those who are listening, the Medicaid to schools is when we provide medically needed instruction to be able to access educational materials, we are able to bill for that. And then we get reimbursed because that's not a part of the educational component. So that's why it's the Medicaid to schools. We bill for it and then they give us the reimbursement through the state.
So it does disrupt cash flow if the timing is delayed on the billing a little bit, but you're saying it hasn't been significant.
It won't affect our cash flow because it's a revenue at the end. We don't anticipate it. Like we put it in as a revenue, but typically speaking, we wouldn't count on that until the end of the year anyway.
Okay.
Because when we budget our budget, it's not included in our budget. It's included in your tax analysis, your tax impact. So it could down the line if we didn't get it by the end, but not for the budget.
All right, thank you. Next up is the superintendent's report. Oh, and I did want to say, if the board doesn't need Ms. LaValle any longer, or if I don't want to hold.
No, that's.
Want me to stay for
No,
you?
no, you're good.
You're welcome to stay if you'd like.
And if it's okay with the board, I'd like to do this a little out of order. I'd like to go over A and E. And then I'd like to, we don't have anything in B, so I'd like to go over A and E, and then I'd like to hold off from the others until we go into non-public. Because I do have some information on those. So under personnel report, I don't have anyone to nominate, but what I would like to bring to the board is again, the information that currently we are greatly understaffed in the business office. We have brought in a BA consultant and he is able to do some oversight, but he's not going into the system and actually modifying anything or editing or changing. So what he will do is he'll go in and say, okay, I've seen this, or he's available for answers and questions, but it's not completing the task. So therefore it still takes either Miss Osborne, myself, or one of the other two people to go in and change something. And that's not necessarily what we were hoping for. It gives us a good overview to make sure we're not making any drastic errors, but it's not completing the tasks. And it is still a challenge. So one of the things that I would ask the board is to consider allowing me to repost for a BA. Now that we know that both districts are budgeting for a full-time business person in their office at either finance management or BA, I think while we wouldn't guarantee another position next year, there is a position available for next year, which we didn't know what was going to be for next year. So I would like to advertise that, because if we don't get someone in here soon, we're really close to the edge of going off. Meaning when we're trying to close out the year-end books and trying to get things set up and correctly set up for both districts next year, without someone who truly has that accounting background to be able to separate some of those things, we run the risk of seeing some errors and trying to get this fixed. As it is, when the auditors first came in, I spent the better part of multiple days getting information for the auditors and did nothing. nothing else that I wanted to try to get done, including it put me back on trying to even develop budgets for the schools because I was constantly trying to find things. I will say we've made a good dent in the audit. They got a lot of information through here on the 3 or 4 days they were here, and then they realized that they were continuing to ask for information, and because we were so short-staffed, we couldn't get it to them fast enough. So they said, why don't we leave for a little bit? Here's a list of the things we need, and we will come back. Again, we had some absences and we weren't able to meet that. They were going to come back on the 13th. We asked them for an extension to the 20th. They are going to come back on the 20th to pick up some of those extra materials. So they should be able to get more of the audit complete. We are moving forward with it. It is going well. They have been very thankful for what we've been able to give them, but they do need some additional materials. With all that being said, like I said, really my goal is now that we know next year a little bit more in detail that both districts need someone, and we're going to be moving forward with that. I think it's important that we get someone in here now to help build that for the districts, because otherwise we do run some risks.
I don't know how the board feels, but I feel that we, in good faith, the joint board agreed to the recommendations for staffing that, and we did what was requested of us, but you don't have an accountant,
No,
you know, and you need someone, I believe, that can come in and understand how the books are running and make the journal entries and go ahead and adjust things. And I think it's extremely stressful for everyone to try to operate in that way. And also you doing double duty like that is really hard on you. You know, it's just tough.
yeah, it is. It's and it's not just me. I want to be very clear. Every one of the business office staff, including HR, is doing
Double
a ton of extra work to make sure things go through. I have approved overtime, knowing that we have extra funds available for some of our staff to make sure things were getting done. I am looking to bring back one of our retirees for a day or two just to help yet again, because we're just falling behind on trying to get things set up. Everything's well within budget. I wouldn't, even hiring someone would be within budget, but I wouldn't do that without even post for that without bringing it to the board.
You need a motion to post for it?
A consensus or a motion would be fine. But my ask is for a BA, not an accountant. If we settle with an accountant because that's what we get, who wants to train up, that's fine. But I'd like to try to get us a BA who is able to really guide our business office more than I can. I really feel bad for our business office, because as much as I'm trying to help them, I just can't guide them in some of their quests.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we post for the position of business administrator for SAU 44.
I got Brian and Kathy.
Kathy, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Can I ask, so what is our agreement with the contract services? So if is that something that we would no longer need if we were to hire a full-time, and that is just an as needed contract for him?
Correct. Currently it's as needed. It's up to 14 hours. I don't believe he's used 14 hours every week. I've approved some of his pay already for the person, and still occasionally Mr. Waring will come in, and the person that we had didn't have SB2 budget background. So I reached out to yet another, I brought in someone else for one Saturday to sit with me and go over the warrant of the SB2 stuff, so that I could build defaults for both boards. And I feel like I had done a pretty decent job with that with them. But again, it's one of those things, like, it's just trying to get someone in here. So, and I'll be a little selfish, so that I don't have to keep coming in on Saturdays to meet with, because that's the only time our consultants are available on Saturdays. So I keep coming in on Saturdays to meet with them. Over Christmas break, I will be meeting with Mr. Waring probably. He said he could give me a half a day to come in, and he's going to sit with me to go over our revenue, because he has a history of our revenue. So in order to give you a better, because I feel like I've gotten your revenues all set for your tax impact. Mr. Ford, who has looked at it, gave me some estimates, but he, you know, without the full background, he said he's just not sure. Mr. Waring has the background, so I'm going to bring him in to really try to make sure that we have the true tax impact done correctly, because your revenue is greatly impact what I put on there for your tax impact.
Mhm.
So I'm putting that through. I was able to work with your food source. So one of the trickiest part of your revenues, just so you know, is right now, because there's free lunch for everyone, you're getting more in food revenue than you've ever gotten before, but I can't put all that revenue in. By law, I can't have more revenue than expense in your food lines. So now I'm trying to figure out how to track that. And I said, well, do I put in the one that like we're tracking for this year, for next year? Because next year might not be free lunch.
Mhm.
But he's like, but you're getting it next year too. So it's these factors like I'm not a food service guy, so I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, it's bigger. So can I put? No, you can't put in more than you build, like more than you budgeted for. All that happens is then that sits in surplus. It can't be used to offset taxes. That sits in your revenue, and then or your surplus, and then for food. And then if you start to pay down or you go into negatives, because of not having, then you would bill, or you could purchase materials for your kitchen, but you
Okay.
can't use it as an offset.
Other-
So if they offer us, let's just say in round numbers, 100, but we only have expenses of 7. You'd put the 100 in and 3 of it would just sit in the general fund.
That's
And
correct.
at the end of the year, it will roll to offset, or can it be used to offset any deficits that may occur?
It can only be used to offset deficits in food,
Okay.
is the way
Because
I
that's
was.
what we always do at the
Yeah.
end of the year. We say, here's what we had in food service. Usually it's like 25 grand that you were short and you take it out of general.
Correct. However, now we don't have to because food is.
Yeah.
So that's the tricky part. So as of right now, for instance, the one I was working on today was, and I'll use Northwoods. Northwood is in the budget. You have about $160,000 in your 3410 lines. I want to say it's your food service line. But you're tracking for 185,000 in revenue. You can't do that. Like you're like, and that's even me conservatively estimating revenue based on more, because you're getting food even on days you don't have school now versus in past you hadn't, because people can come over breaks and still get meals, so you're getting reimbursed for that, but your costs aren't there based on the contract. And then we have to wait for food service to say, no, even though you only budgeted this amount, because we were giving more food, it actually costs more. But I can't put it in as a revenue if I don't know what the extra cost was yet. So that's where that goes above my accounting.
I'm sure. I was just more asking of personnel if we think that once there's the BA that we will no longer need, because I know the recent, Mr. Waring, I know has a little more history, but the newer person is not necessarily going to have a lot of information to share with a new BA.
Correct. So what I would think is try to ask Mr. Waring if he'd be available on occasional phone calls to the new BA, because even the current person wouldn't have a lot of the information. However,
Right.
if you bring a BA in, they would be able to speak with NASBO. NASBO will work with anybody, and they'll just be able to answer yes or no questions like this is allowable or this isn't allowable.
All right.
Would you be open to having someone that is tracking toward a BA?
Of course.
Or is a finance manager? So when you make the distinction, you have maybe a finance manager / BA certified.
Mhm.
But if you found someone that had experience in the state, but wasn't certified as a BA, but could, knew the filings, understood the DRA filings and all just everything that needed to be done, would you be okay with that?
Of course I would. Yeah, like when I say BA role, it doesn't need to be certified. I just need someone who understands that role.
Okay.
So if they were an assistant somewhere else in another district, then this was their chance to become a BA, and they wanted to that would be great. If that's the way they were tracking. My concern is not having someone with a finance background or the school background. As you know, we did look at some other contracted agencies, and while they had a great finance background, they didn't have a school background, so that didn't help us out as much either. So if we could find someone who had a school background but wasn't certified, but understood the rules, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think it'd be wise I think sometimes the connotation, if we say BA, is that you have to be certified, and it might cut out
I can put that in
some
the
folks,
I can put that in the job description, BA or working towards certification.
or experience with the systems. Because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there looking at the lists in the state that aren't certified, but they've worked in districts, and I think they know how things roll. So
That'd be fine.
I know Sorry. I didn't
No,
mean to
no, go
interrupt
ahead.
you. I know that we've talked about positions that are in sort of a critical shortage. And does
Yes.
business administrator fit that bill as well?
Yes, it does.
So add in the complexities of us splitting in July, in June, yeah. that
So-
makes sense.
Not only is it in that list, but there's also no state approved program right now. There's
Hmm.
truly in a college, there's NASBO, which is offering the certification, but not all of it's, you can't get it all at once. It's
Mhm.
tracking throughout years
Mhm,
to complete those programs.
Right.
I think
Okay.
they come out of Texas.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All righty. All right, any more questions? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I'm just gonna quickly check and make sure Chrissy's not with us. Chrissy, have you been able to dial back in? I don't think so. All right, so we'll just go ahead and do a normal vote. So all those in favor? All right, anyone opposed or abstaining? All right, so that motion carries with 8 in favor.
Thank you. And I know the business office will thank you. So I don't have a correspondence, so, other than from the lease update and the separation agreement, and I've already gone over the audit, so that's everything here until we would go into non-public.
Okay. And those are the items I've called for earlier that,
Mhm.
that Mary sent out. Okay.
Yep.
And you've got copies. Thanks for doing that.
I did not get a copy of the lease agreement because it's so short.
Yeah,
but
we'll
I'll
just sign it
yeah.
and move on. So the lease agreement is just extending it for that 1 month to facilitate everybody's
that doesn't-
transferring of stuff.
True, it doesn't even actually need to be in non-public. It's just, I know we usually go under the L for lease, I believe it is. No, L for legal, K for lease. So it's really just extending 1 more month at the same rate we've been paying. So it will carry us from July 1st to July 31st at the same rate of $4,180.97, which is what was in the budget anyway.
Mhm.
So we just stopped it at 11. We went back and forth and they have accepted to go ahead and go by 1 more month so that we'll wind up with all the floors again for 1 more month to allow us to get everything out.
Great.
Thank you.
I have that addendum right here.
So we'll just sign that and get that rolling.
Yeah.
I don't think we have other items right now. I have one other item that I wanted to bring up in non-public. Okay, so we move on to our SAU structuring committee and transition team committee updates.
I can go for Northwood. The SAU Structuring Committee has stopped meeting because they gave recommendations to Northwood School Board. Northwood School Board accepted those recommendations and budgeted for them. And then as of Saturday, the Budget Committee is recommending our budget without changes to the voters. So move on. Pretty good.
You still have to officially do your hearing though, right?
Yeah,
But
it's.
but
yeah.
they like sort of,
We do a
give it-
workshop and if you want to see some drama, you can live stream it. It was an exciting meeting for a little while anyways, but in the end, the budget committee voted to recommend those numbers, which means that they'll bring that to public hearing. And then if people wanted to change their mind, it takes like a 2/3 vote to reopen discussion on it. Something like that. And I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So that's, I appreciate this. We appreciate the support from the budget committee at this point, the ones who were there. And that's that.
so you guys have decided to stay here and take
Yeah.
1 floor?
Right, we're not going to be leasing the bottom floor or the top floor. We're staying in the middle. They're going to be installing a kitchen. And we've reached, we have a quote for a price for the year. So that'll stay here. We're moving all dead to one of the preschool rooms, and we'll have one of the rooms will be preschool, one of the rooms will be all dead. And those are for facilities wise, those are the changes. Yeah, and then a lot of the stuff is, the positions that we've already talked about that will be hopefully splitting and depending on what you guys are doing, but we'll be downsizing and what we'll be sticking with, so.
Carol, did you want to go ahead with? Not again.
I missed the last meeting, didn't I?
All we did the last meeting was look at the software, but.
So we have our superintendent position just posted.
Yep. part-time for that.
In other words, we're looking at all the different financial software packages. We had done an RFP for that, and the transition committee was looking at it first before
Right.
making a recommendation to the board. And then the location, I guess, is the big up in the air. The Board of Selectmen may be talking about one of the town properties tonight. They had a bid for renovations that was due, I think last Friday, so we were hoping they may be talking about tonight. And hopefully we'll hear something from them.
Yeah, I did check with them and they said they weren't going to be, I guess they've changed the design a little bit, but anyway, we're hoping for the old. We've been asked to take the old town hall and there'll be renovations, so. And that's what they're working on now, an RFP for that, and so we're gonna be crunched coming up, the Nottingham board, working with the Board of Selectmen around getting that all.
It's a beautiful facility.
It is pretty, but it's just gotta get there, and, yeah, like Carol said, we're looking at the software and trying to understand, whether we wanna do iVision or BMSI or what have you, so.
So the town has money available if they can encumber it by the end of this month. So that's the big.
To
They
get
have
under,
signed
to get under
contract.
contract
Like surplus.
or to fix that building to make it
Yeah.
usable for us.
Which one is the old town hall?
It's across from our library, so it's like up on the hill, kind of right before 156. It's
Yeah.
up on the right.
Great.
It's right next to where the old fire station.
Right.
So yeah, they did say that Dale had made some adjustments to some of the plans, and then they were looking at some of the bids for that. That's what I heard from CIP the other
Not
day.
Dale, our.
Yeah, sorry,
Planning.
who works for the town,
Yeah.
not the busing company.
The planning director.
The planning director, so,
Yeah.
and that they were looking to make that space, so there is a big community room, so they would keep that as a space that used community, and then in the back, they would have their offices,
Wonderful.
so, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully they can get that out of the town surplus, and because then you don't have to deal with putting a warrant and waiting for the March vote and stuff like.
Mm,
That would be a much more doable timeline, I think, so good luck to you guys.
yes.
Thanks. That's really all that we have, I think.
Mm.
Once we get that piece tied down, it'll be a big relief.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
One-
That's a big piece.
One checked off.
It's a really nice building. It's got a big, beautiful room in it. And
Yeah.
Not that we'd be using.
They
it
talked about a
much.
kitchen, that's what they were talking about, the new plans maybe would call for a little kitchen in between, so that if people rented the space, they could actually have use of the kitchenette area,
Sure.
and then that would
That
also
makes
be
sense.
kitchen area for the offices, so kind of like an in-between space. So
Yeah, because we needed
sounded
that
like-
ADA compliant bathroom and then the kitchen, but
Mhm.
apparently they couldn't sink it right where it was because of the cement flooring.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So they
So
have
there's
to-
some sort
they're
of
gonna
little
build out
addition
there.
off the back a little bit, but yeah, we'll see, hopefully it can happen.
So that's what we're waiting for, just those bid, and the Board of Selectmen will take a look at it and figure it out.
We should also announce that our structuring committee had made a recommendation for a full-time superintendent. We have secured Mr. Berlin to stay with us. So there's another big piece of our process.
That's good.
I'm excited by it.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to look again.
Wow. I'm excited.
Well, a little tired now, and yeah, I am very excited by it. I'm excited to, what really scared me is I just realized I meant to write a letter over the weekend for the staff, and I didn't. That's why I was like, oh.
Oh, well, we're not sitting in the meeting.
Yes, I know, but I was gonna write a letter, and I didn't, and I realized that at the moment I said it, I was like, oh no. All right, yeah, no, that's okay.
This meeting will be almost done.
Yeah, I'll be able to do it tonight.
Oh, no.
Does your plan call for a BA or is it flexible about BA?
We budgeted for a full-time BA, but we've discussed that really kind of however we can get the services met in this market is.
That's why I was apprehensive.
Alrighty then. So for our future agenda items, I guess we'll keep, obviously, our structuring committee items. I think pretty much this agenda would roll forward
Right.
without building lease probably.
Mhm.
I don't know if there are any other items we need to talk about.
The only thing I want to look at, and
Policy.
that's what I was gonna say, is we're gonna have to start looking at policy, because you have some SAU style policies, but I think those are really gonna start to take place more at the local level. I think while we have certain things in place here, and we need to keep them in place,
Yep.
I think most of the changes that we make, you're gonna want to start really looking at how they are impacting the local level, because all of the policies that say SAU 44, you would want to make sure that they're saying SAU 44 Northwood School District or SAU
Mhm.
whatever Nottingham School District. So we'll want to start changing some of that. What I will tell you what Stratford had done was they held off a lot of their policies until later on, as they brought in their new superintendent, and that person helped to do some of the policies that could hold off, especially at the SAU level.
Mhm.
So that's one of those things, but I'd be happy to say that, if we want to start looking at a policy committee for the joint board to really look at those, we could do that as well. That's the one thing that we're gonna probably have to look at.
Does Northwood have a policy committee?
We do.
Yeah. I wonder if we could just have
Meet those
one
two
or two
groups.
designees from the two policy committees.
Just go ahead, have the
Yeah.
board members that do that. One thing we do need on this level
Probably Jim.
is the
Which it's Yan Sue's.
Yeah.
All the same people.
unassigned fund balance for the purposes of the audit. We have unassigned fund balance policies, but I think the auditors were looking for something deeper. I tried to go today online with the New Hampshire School Boards Association, and I had seen an email from them in October on the 28th saying that they were changing the passwords, and we'd get a password update on the 29th, but I cannot find it.
I don't think I got.
So it wasn't just me. So I was gonna try to find a draft one, but I don't have a password to
I
the.
thought I got that email.
Did you? I looked in my inbox and I don't have
I'll
anything.
look too. I'll ask him if I see something. I'll get-
So that's one policy we definitely should do
Okay.
here and get that up, because they will ask for it and for the audit, and I hate to have it be a third year or
Okay.
second year, or whatever it is.
I thought Mr. Waring helped create a
He
policy.
did, but for some reason it didn't get posted or something, and they dinged us in the comments at
Okay.
the SAU level for that.
Okay,
So,
let me see if that's kicking around here with
okay.
Miss Bulger to see if we have it. I thought that got,
I know we talked about it, and then we had done some cash flow analysis and amounts that need to be left on hand and all those kinds of things. So that's all stuff that'll be coming up, but I don't believe it's posted. We have one, but they did not feel that it was in depth enough to speak about all the different types. And I think we're different from local districts as well, because we can carry forward.
yes.
So,
I did find the email with the password, so I'll forward
okay,
it to you.
awesome. Thank you so much. I just didn't see it.
Sign the number.
All right, so we'll look at that and unassigned
I
fund
think
balance
that's what
policy for
we'll do.
next time.
Mhm.
Okay.
Interesting.
Draft of
Okay.
105.
Yep, and then our next meeting date will be January 10th
You
at
guys
6:30,
wanna- Just before.
Yeah.
and we do have need of a non-public
Yes.
session.
And that would just be under L at this point. That-
And maybe A,
Yes, I was gonna say, and A.
All right. I will make a motion that we go into non-public under RSA 91-A:3, 2, and then what do you say, A and L?
Yes.
okay, so A and L.
Second.
So